Atapu, Namaste, Harun Nefer. This is Kasakma Keparu with another broadcast for you. And in this broadcast, I want to talk about that I finally made ET contact, an amazing story. You're going to want to hear this. But before I do that, I'd like you to hit the like button on this video. And if it's your first time to my channel, welcome. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications on when I go live and when I upload recorded videos. Also, we have free ebooks that will expand more on my spiritual teachings. You can click the links below and download those ebooks and start reading today. And if you're not already a supporter of ours on Patreon, please consider doing so. You can do so for as little as $1 or $20 per month. You get access to really cool videos on hypnosis, doing a ritual, how to communicate with the ancestors, how to put together a ritual to bring you good fortune, things like that. So consider becoming a Patreon supporter, and you can cancel at any time. There's, of course, no obligation, but the material will take you to the next step of your spiritual journey. So namaste, how are you? How are the Magi's in the chat room? How you guys doing? I had a really challenging day today. I was very sick today, just in total pain. It was good because I'm seeing my doctor. I believe when am I seeing him, on Wednesday or Thursday, and he and I have to talk because I don't want to live a life in continual pain, even though he says that's probably what's going to happen. And it's just it's exhausting. And when you do studies on people who live with pain, you'll see that a lot of them get to a point where they get to a deep state of depression, and some get suicidal. Luckily, I haven't gotten to that point yet, but I'd like to see if surgery or what can be done to really just stop the pain on a permanent basis. And another thing that happened, which probably wasn't helping things any, during the holidays, I started. I don't really eat a lot, but if I find something I pretty much like, I'll stay with it. So I got addicted to this one really, it's a spicy hot ball, and I would put it in my mouth and I would just suck on it for a long period of time, and then I would bite down. And what I didn't realize what it was doing, and it did, and which is why you'll see me stumble on my words now, is it actually stripped the top layer of my tongue. So my tongue is raw. So if I try to eat something, it burns. If I try to drink something, it really burns. So I'm really taking it easy. And I didn't realize this was happening. I was just eating this. And then again, I look back on it, I was really just going overboard. I would be 3 in the morning when I'm typing, I would go in there and get a spicy ball and suck on it for 2 hours and go get another one. And lo and behold, I didn't realize that it was damaging my tongue. So when we were at the production today, I'm trying not to speak too much because my tongue hits the top portion of the roof of my mouth and the pain comes in. So it was really one of those challenging days. Hey, Hatepu Nikki, are you okay? Can you guys hear me well? So yeah. And I'm sorry I had to push this back a bit, but I have to make sure that before I do the broadcast, I have to take my medication, wait for a while for it to take effect so I won't be in pain. Otherwise, it's not good seeing me in pain, believe me. So when the medication, and that was my fault because I went to the production this morning and I forgot my medication. You know what I mean? And I'm on I'm on 7 different types of medication. And one is actually right here. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's let me see, right there. It's like a patch that goes on. And yeah, so it's right there, and that stays on there for about 72 hours, and I have to replace it. So it's a lot of work, man, a lot of maintenance. But we'll see what can be done. All right. Now let's talk about this very important subject matter. And I actually don't know where to begin because there's a lot of things that are happening with this. First off, there is one of the reasons why I relocated was because when I was doing my readings with the Oracle kept mentioning this thing about ET contact, and I wasn't sure what it was getting at. And then lo and behold, the more readings I did, the more I realized that hey, it's telling me that I am going to have ET contact. So we looked at the best possibilities of where that could happen. So I don't know if you guys are aware of, but I'm really like, I'm right next to Area 51. Yeah. So um, based on the Oracle's blessing and it telling me where to go, I relocated and I said, okay, let's see if this thing happens. You know, if I, and then and I've always studied this subject matter, I've really been into it. Um, and I'm going to reveal some stuff to you that's kind of shocking. So, and I think the only reason I'm doing that because I think you guys need to know about what's going on. And I'm not going to go too much into detail because then I'll have, I kid you not, like the CIA and all these other government agencies like now monitoring me. But so I'll really talk about what's going on in that arena, if it's real or if it's not. So, you know, I relocated and I'm like, didn't know where to go from there. Like, oh, where do I go? Do I join a UFO group? Do I go up into the mountains? Because yeah, right here by the mountains and wait, you know? So what was frustrating was the Oracle just kept coming and telling me, wait, just chill, wait. They will contact you. I'm like, what? They're going to contact me? How's that going to happen? So I'm reading the abduction stories, right? And they're pretty much very scary stories, right? So I'm like, you know, speaking to my ancestors and God and saying, listen, I don't want to be abducted. I don't want no really scary experience with these beings now. Like, how is this going to go down? Because I have like really some apprehension about that type of situation because every individual, when you do the research into this, I mean, the legitimate research, you'll find out after they have been abducted, their lives has gone downhill. And that's because they suffer from trauma, stress. Some have due to be exposed to certain UFO crafts, have had radiation and then develop cancer. So, you know, all of this stuff, I'm like, oh, what's up? But, you know, one thing I've always did in my life was listen to the oracles, obeyed it because it is the word of God, and just go ahead and follow the oracle. So I said, well, if this is the deal, I'm going to do it. So the oracle said, don't join the UFO group. You don't have to go up into the mountain and wait for it, you know. And so I said, okay, I'm just going to wait. I guess that's what I do. So, you know, I want you guys to be aware of a couple of things. I'm not really sure how in depth you are with the whole UFO thing. And I just want to give you like a quick um, abridged introduction into the UFO arena. First and foremost, if you were to study this, what you'll find out is that 95% of the people who say they have been abducted are just outright liars. And they're doing it for various reasons. They're doing it because they want publicity. There's money to be made because there are many UFO groups all across the planet. And if they think that you are telling the truth and they have no way of verifying it, they will fly you out and pay your expenses, and you'll be traveling and you get an opportunity to write a book and get money off of it. So 95% of these individuals are outright lying. I know them. I know who's lying, you know, but you don't want to, I don't want to get into like making these accusations because they can file a defamation of character lawsuit against me. And there was one man in particular who I fingered many years ago. And the only reason why I tried to out him or even try to have a communication with him, because I felt that not only was he lying, but the things he was saying were outright racist. And that really bothered me. Um, and many of you may know him. His name is Whitley Strieber, right here. All right. And he did a book called Communion. If you get an opportunity, I advise you should read this book. I read this book about 3 times. First and foremost, let's give credit where credit is due. It's a well-written, awesome book. It is really good. You know, it's like a page turner. You know, and I love this his writing style. And so I would go back over it, but there's just blatant stuff that he's lying about. And yeah, and his backstory is he's a Hollywood screenwriter whose career was on the outs. So then he said, "Oh, I got abducted by aliens in this cabin in the woods." I'm like, "So you are a Hollywood screenwriter, and the aliens pick you to abduct? That's very interesting." All right, but not only that, and I could go into the details, and I won't, of the certain pages where he describes the aliens in very racist terms, And then says they have a class system. The higher level, the hierarchy, the higher level aliens are very pale whitish, and the lower aliens are dark blackish blue with wide noses and big lips. And I'm sitting there going, "Are you serious? You actually put this in paper?" And I reached out to his agent to have a conversation about this because I'm like, you know, I would love to believe you, but this is crazy. I don't. This is ridiculous what you've written here. And him and his wife would get letters from other abductees, because they felt that he was like a kindred spirit and wanted to talk with him. And now I think the UFO community has wised up because, in my opinion, I'm not saying, he has told a lot of tall stories. You know what I mean? Now we get into the fact of time travel, interdimensional travel, um, the dead spirits talking to him. I'm like, dude, how does? And even when he was being interviewed by one broadcast, they were saying, do you know statistically the odds of all these things happening to you? Like you being visited by the dead, you being visited by time travelers, you being abducted by aliens, and then there's some more stuff. Oh yeah, he was involved in the Roswell crash, and I'm like, dude, come on. But one of the interesting things about the whole UFO arena, one of the first documented cases of UFO abduction came from a couple known as Betty and Barney Hill. And if you get an opportunity, I advise that you research their story. It is a very, very interesting story. Now, I'm going to admit, I have some problems with, I mean, I do believe them, but I have some problems with some of the things that happen. You know what I mean? That I would like questions to. And that's Betty and Barney Hill there. And why don't we just get a quick overview of exactly like what happened to them, because it's a very interesting story. Because during the time they got abducted, this is when interracial relationships were not approved of. So them going public with their story was something that at that period in time um, would put all this focus on them as an interracial couple, and even more focus on them with their claim of being abducted by aliens. So you got to give them kudos for being brave to come out and say all of this stuff, right? And so let me just play a little bit about this so we can understand like their story. This is from the Project Blue Book case files.
September 1961 has the first really dramatic and well-publicized case of alien abduction.
Betty and Barney Hill were driving through the White Mountain area of New Hampshire.
It was late at night. Betty sees this unusual light that seems to be maneuvering.
This light stopped in midair directly in front of us. The car motor stalled, and at that point, I realized that they undoubtedly planned to take us on board.
And then the next thing is that they're 35 miles down the road, and they have no idea how they got that far down the road. It turns out they were missing 2 hours.
My wife decided, well, we should notify someone, and we thought of notifying the military base located in this area.
A radar had detected something unidentified and had reported it through channels inside the Air Force.
They had tracked an unidentified craft at 2:14 a.m., just about the time we estimate that the UFO left.
They developed a series of nightmares, and as a result of that, ufologists told them you should be regressed hypnotically to try to see if you remember more. The doctor who did the hypnosis was Dr. Simon, and he was an expert, and he played the tapes for us. They are terrifying.
All right, Captain, what is it? You're still asleep, but you can see it all clearly. Looks like a big pancake with windows.
Something very traumatic had happened to them.
The Betty and Barney Hill case interested my father a lot, and he did take part in a hypnotic interview.
This case did get a lot of behind-the-scenes attention from some very interesting scientists. They wanted to know what happened to Betty and Barney Hill.
All right, that's interesting. Wow, cool. Actually, before I actually jumped ahead. So that's a very interesting story. Um, I want you to see an interview with Whitley Strieber, and I want you to see how he is not like, you can just look at, he has these ticks. He seems like an off person, but judge for yourself. But I definitely wanted you guys to check this out so you can get an idea of, him and his background and everything like that. So let's take a look at that.
Night sky and wondered if life lay between the stars, then you may be familiar with our guest today, Whitley Strieber. Whitley, the material from your book actually comes from your own experiences with aliens.
The Greys is a novel based on my own experiences with these strange beings, which have come to be called popularly the Greys, because they're small, they have big black eyes, and they're sort of gray in color. Partly it's based on my knowledge of the context of this experience that many people have had.
Could you tell us a little bit about the story?
Well, the story of the Greys is the story of an attempt on the part of these beings to build a relationship with a community. It starts with a family and goes back generations as they create, by drawing people together, certain people that they have chosen together for their genetic patterns and genetic makeup, to, over the years, create a certain child with certain types of ability, a certain level of intelligence. And they intend to use this child as the means by which they will communicate with the world, because the great problem they have is that they are so different from us that they have no direct way of communicating. Government officials who are involved in this and very afraid of it react. They react very negatively to the presence of this child, and they try to gain.
Okay, so let me just hold on there because I want to explain something, right? So that we have a clear understanding of what he's talking about. So not only did he say he's been abducted by these Greys, these aliens, but since then he's gone on now to publish a number of books, all fictional. So as you can see here, it's a very profitable thing for him and his wife now that they can now bridge the idea. In other words, get into the UFO community, talk about this abduction, and then from there sell books of of a fiction um, origin, and get those books then made into Hollywood movies, which what he did. So, and you'll find that there's a lot of that in the UFO arena. Now, going back to the story of Betty and Barney Hill, which is a very interesting story. And I want to point out something that's kind of done too in legal cases. And you'll see what I mean in just a second. So there is a book that was published about the incident. And basically what they were saying was that they were driving, saw the light in the sky, turned out to be a UFO, landed, took them aboard the ship and did experiments on them. And Barney felt it was a very terrifying experience, but his wife, she rather enjoyed it. She was talking to them, and they actually showed her a star map. And Carl Sagan, I don't know if you guys remember, he passed away, tried to debunk the star map that she had drawn from the aliens, showing them their star map. And the aliens have said, well, these are routes that we take when we travel. And this is the planets that they come from, which I guess they showed her was Zeta Reticuli. So Carl Sagan really doesn't buy any UFO abductions. He never did. He did endorse SETI, which is another search for extraterrestrial life. But the thing about this is when the book came out, they described in a similar way the aliens being kind of like grays. And it's usually they're about 3 to 4 feet in height, dark black eyes. And they say that those eyes, when they look at you, it really peers to your soul, and it's very scary. And that's some of the ways that they can take you over in terms of mind control, that these grays. Now, as I said before, as far as Whitley Strieber is concerned, I don't believe his story. at all because of the racist connotations in it. But it's a good book to read if you're looking, to read a good science fiction take on things. Um, and the thing that I was kind of alluding to with the Betty and Barney Hill, she did talk about what these aliens looked like. But what she had omitted from the book, which is a very smart thing she did, was the fact that these aliens were being controlled by another alien, which was short and didn't look anything like the aliens that she was communicating with on the ship. And then what she said that the aliens that she was communicating on the ship were friendly, they were loving beings. But she said that really short guy was terrifying and he was calling the shots because the aliens gave her a book and they said, you can keep this book. But that little short guy came out and he was like, no, you're not keeping this book. In fact, you're not going to remember any of this. The reason why she omitted something like that, which I think was a really good thing, because when you're trading stories with other UFO abductees, you want to see if they have something that they will say that you can then say, oh, you mean that there was a being when you were on a ship in control of things that was a short being? Well, that happened to me. And then that gives it a little more credibility. You know what I mean? Because too many of these individuals who are coming out there and exploiting the UFO arena are just reading other people's books and just making up stories and going on the lecture circuit. And that's what they're doing. Here's another story, and I was researching this one recently because I love his story. It's very interesting. He also had a very unnerving experience, him and his friends, and he's been talking about it. So his name is Travis Walton. So let's just take a look at his story real briefly. Let me share my screen again. Travis Walton. And he seems like a very honest and stand-up guy. You know what I mean? I didn't find too much of a problem with his story, but we'll see.
It was a terrifying experience. I thought we was going to go to jail for murder. That day, we were a little behind, so we worked until it was starting to get dark. We loaded up the equipment and hadn't driven very far when we caught glimmers of this glow coming through the trees. I urged Mike to hurry up, get up there. Travis had the door open before we even stopped. As he got closer, I heard the sound. One of the guys said, "You feel that?" I really panicked then. I told him, "Get the hell out of here." It didn't come directly to me. It came to a deputy sheriff. Three of us volunteered right away to tell him what had happened. Sheriff Gillespie definitely didn't believe it. He says that we better be certain. So we get in a lot of trouble. When we went to search the next day, they split us up, and the whole time the deputies asked me, if you just tell us where the body is, we can all go home with this over with.
We're talking about 100 people combing through the wooded area. Nothing turns.
So let me set this up because it's probably a little bit confusing for you. So let me set the stage here. So Travis Walton, and I think it was about 4 other guys, this is back in the 60s, were cutting trees down in the forest. And they had just finished their day. It was very dark, and they were heading home in a truck. And lo and behold, they saw a craft hovering above the trees. So Travis jumps out the truck to get a closer look, and he gets hit by a beam, which essentially all of his co-workers thought he was dead when he got hit with that, and they got afraid, so they sped off in a truck. And then as they were speeding off to get back to town, they felt guilty, and they decided to go back and retrieve his body. So when he went back, he wasn't there, nor was the UFO craft there. Well, lo and behold, they went back into town to get the authorities. And what followed was Travis was missing for about 5 days. And in that 5 days, the authorities were looking at these group of guys, these young guys, 4 of them, as though they had murdered him, buried his body in the woods, and made up a UFO abduction story. And what Travis says that he woke up and he was in terrible pain, and he thought he was in the hospital because he could his vision was blurry, but he can see people around him. But then when his vision got really clear, he saw that they were not human. and he was terrified. So he jumped up and grabbed something off the table and threatened to hit them. And they didn't talk to him. They wouldn't say anything. And he was like, "Who are you? What are you? These creatures?" And then they just like did this and then scurried out the room. And he was freaking out and didn't know what to do. So he left the room going the exact opposite way because he didn't want to run into them again. So he actually went into another room where there was a a seat there with controls on it. So he went there, sat in there, and he was thinking that maybe if he pushed a button, the bottom would come out and he could jump down and be in the forest and run home. But he quickly realized that that ship was not in the forest; it was probably in space. So he presses the buttons and nothing happens. But he did see from the account that stars were forming all around him. And if you guys know, if you know anything about astrology, this is what we would call stellar cartography. So that's the kind of room he was in. So he heard a sound coming from the back of him, and he turns around, and there's a human, a man standing there with a helmet on. So Travis goes up to him and he says, "Wow, man, did you see those crazy beings?" He says, "We got to get out of here." So the man doesn't say anything to him, but leads them out of the ship into a hangar where Travis sees other ships in the hangar, big hangar. And then the man leads him to another room where there are three other human figures there. And they want him to lie on the table. And they put this mask over him and he passes out. He wakes up in the middle of the forest and he gets to a phone and he calls his brother, and his brother comes to get him. And then the news media swarm him and they're like, "Where were you? What happened?" And he was basically just traumatized, and he explains what he went through. No one believes him. um, he has to go, him and the other four guys have to go for lie detector tests. Charges of murder were almost filed. It was very deep. So it's a good, interesting story if you want to check that out. So let's go back to this now.
All week long, I've been hearing they're going to set it up to make you guys look guilty.
We're a rough-looking bunch, then. Some of us have been in trouble with the law before.
And y'all ain't never going to come out of that jailhouse.
We couldn't get out.
I tried to sneak out the back door the day of the polygraph test. I was scared to death.
On top of that, you have media.
I literally would be on 2 telephones at the same time.
We even got some coops in here now that's coming in and out to see the freak show, as they call it.
Everyone dissents.
I just wasn't going to stand there. Let's do it anymore.
Granny says, "This is Travis. I'm back. I need help."
When I did hear that he had been returned, it was almost as unbelievable as the original thing.
I just looked at my mom and says, "I told you we didn't kill him."
Travis Walton reappeared after several days with a bizarre story about a ride in an unidentified flying object.
People were desperate to explain it away.
Why are you sticking up for Travis for all this time? You know this really didn't happen.
What happened to Travis after we took off in that truck, I can't tell you.
I hated Travis for a long time after this. My whole world just tore up.
But I believe every word Travis said about it. He's never lied to me about nothing. It's a net negative. We lost our jobs in the immediate aftermath.
And now you're not able to talk about it with anyone because you know that they're going to laugh at you. They're going to look at you like you're crazy.
But if you don't come out and tell your story, somebody else is going to tell it for you.
There's a degree of responsibility. Certainly I have to accept the bad. If I can direct what's happened in a way that I can make something good happen in the world, I'm looking for it.
All right, that's kind of cool. So check out this story. I really liked it. And like I said, when you see him, you'll see that he's just a very honest, upfront guy, and he also hates the people that go out there and make up abduction stories and profit off of it. But anyway, so what I want to let you know is this. Basically, you also have, because these abductions are happening, and the grays, as they're called, and they all look alike, and some say that they're clones, like grayish, white, and pale in complexion, big dark eyes, big head, You know, they said they look like embryos. Um, but most people who go through the experience says it was terrifying, but the creatures never hurt them. And if you also are a follower of Bashar, says he channels ETs and stuff like that. And what he was saying was that now, which is true, we're seeing a lot less abductions. And the theory he was putting forth was that the ETs now realize that abducting people is traumatizing them. So they have backing away from that, which is, I believe, is kind of true. Because I don't, and even Travis Walton agrees. He doesn't think that, even though he was terrified and afraid of them, he said he didn't think they meant him any harm. In fact, they were trying to heal him because he stepped in the way of this ray, and for he could have been dead, and he knew that they were trying to, you know, heal him and bring him back to life, which they did. And he says since that has happened, he has never had any health issues, which is good, you know. But so lo and behold comes our government. All right. So what do they have to do about this? So Stephen Greer is another UFOologist and researcher. And I agree with him on this, but I don't believe much of what he says. The government comes along and they fake UFO abductions. And the reason they're doing this, xenophobia, whatever, they want you to fear the ETs. Because if you start understanding that the universe is populated by other beings that want to communicate with us, that want communion, that want to exchange ideas and help guide us, that removes the power from the ruling elite. And now they've come up with a way using holographic technology to stage UFO abductions. And what they want to do is they want to, and this has happened in a couple of cases that I've researched, killed the people they've abducted. And the idea behind that is they want you to think that if you're abducted, you will be killed. And they want you to be scared. So we have to now really look at it this way. There's a situation we're dealing with where these extraterrestrials want to contact us, want to work with us. And our own government, the ruling elite, using black ops projects, hidden government funding, are pooling their money resources into faking abductions, striking fear and terror into the population. If you go back and you look at the films of the 50s, the 40s, 50s, 60s, what were those films? Like, they were all about the nuclear war or radiation, mutating gigantic bugs, film called Thumb, another one called Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It was always around the idea of fearing something, fearing those other people. I did a whole paper on this, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is really about being afraid of Black people. This is the whole psychosis that was going on at that time. So the ruling elite is, again, is pulling the same trick out of their trick bags, trying to get you to be afraid of the universe, afraid of these extraterrestrials. So I want you to keep that in mind. And one of the things that I personally experienced, where you can tell if it's a government man-made craft or if it's a real ET, the ET vessels are powered by consciousness. They place their consciousness within the vessels. So when you look at it and you see it in the sky, you will realize it is a conscious entity looking at you. And you may even feel some type of communication going on. Versus if you see a government-made craft, it may do some amazing aerodynamics, but you won't feel any type of communication or anything. It'll be a cold experience. And Stephen Greer was talking about that's how you know if it's the real deal or if it's the government through one of the agencies developing this technology. And they have the whole thing about, well, in Roswell, there was a crash and they got a UFO and they reverse engineering it and building our own UFOs. Okay, let me explain something. I don't believe in the Roswell crash. No ETs come here from another galaxy 50 light years away, and then suddenly they crash on Earth due to a storm. Their ships are too advanced for that. What I do believe is the government staged that Roswell incident to introduce the concept of UFOs and to start laying the foundation to make us afraid. All right. So let's go to my story and tell you my situation and what happened with me. And I'm going to just give you the very cursory understanding of it. I'm not going to get into the details. I will get into the specific details of what happened for my Patreon supporters because they're good supporters and they deserve exclusive content. So, as I said before, in doing the oracle readings, I knew that, hey, there was a possibility of contact, but I didn't understand like how it had happened. And I had a lot of apprehension about it because, again, every story I read, the people who were abducted were traumatized. And I said, I don't need that in my life. The oracle was like, be cool. It's going to be cool. All right. So I'm like, all right, I'll go with the flow here. So I'm doing readings and it just says to wait. And I'm like very frustrated because, you know, when you uproot yourself and you move, you want quick thing to happen. So I'm doing readings like, will it happen next month? Will it happen next year? And then it said, it will happen before the end of the year. And that's what like, okay, before the end of the year. This is scary, right? So I'm driving and I'm driving by the mountains and there's snow-capped mountains. It's beautiful. It's like beautiful. Now I'm going to get into that aspect with my Patreon supporters because I don't go into those mountains by myself. I bring a tracker, a gun, and the reason being that there's a large percentage of people that just go missing. So, and I'll explain that. Okay. Let me backtrack a bit. Several years ago, there was a guy that came along to claim that he had photographs of these ETs. And they were online. So I said, wow, no one has ever photographed them. Let me take a look at it, right? So I went and I saw the photographs. And I'll share that on Patreon. There were a lot of them. And the one thing I noticed is that most of the UFO abduction cases was saying that the grays all looked alike, like they were cloned. Some theorize that they are clones or they're robotic machines. But his photos were different species. None looked the same. And I'm like, well, and the photos are like phenomenal. They're really crystal clear and they're freaky. They're scary. You when you see what they look like, you'll be like, ooh. But I never put much credence into that. And I never even did an oracle reading on it. And I would say, okay, this is cool. They look cool. I don't know if he's telling the truth. He made these photos up. I don't know, but they look really creepy, right? And just as a funny story, I was talking about Whitley Strieber and how I believe that he made up his entire story. They had showed him a video of an alien, which turned out to be really a puppet that they created. And when he saw the video, he said, yeah, that's a real alien. Where'd you get that from? They're like, no, it's a puppet. I'm just like, he's so full of shit. He doesn't know anything. So, okay. So lo and behold, the way that they, let's backtrack to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, filmed by Steven Spielberg, which is a true story that they're posing as science fiction. All right. And you can go back and read about the actual situations that really happened. So driving along, and I'm going to tell you how they operate. They implant ideas into you to go certain places and to do certain things that you wouldn't normally do. And it takes you out your daily routine. So I'm doing something, I'm going somewhere, and I'm not really thinking about why I'm doing it. And I remember it very clearly, like, oh, I'm just going to go here, even though there's no reason I should be going here at this time of the night, and you don't logically think about that. So long story short, I made contact where they came out and I saw them. And what I saw should have terrified me and should have frightened me. But I know what they did. It was like disarming the nervous system. putting you into a state of kind of like a slumber, so you won't get up, so you won't get frightened, so you won't panic. Because I knew I was very loopy and I was just very calm about everything. And I was like, oh, there's ETs, they're coming out. Oh, okay. And I said, that's not a normal human reaction. And the funny thing about it was when they came out, it was almost as if they were introducing themselves to me. But there was no verbal communication and there was no telepathy. So there was not like they were communicating to my mind. I got no impression of that. But the interesting thing about it was when I saw them, the first thing I noticed, they looked exactly like the photographs of that guy many years ago who said he had images of them. Exactly like that. And I was like, whoa. So he was telling the truth. So I'm seeing this and I'm really, and then I start to really question like, hey, why am I not overreacting to this? This is like a really huge thing. Um, and some told me to go home and go to bed. That's all. I was going home and go to bed. So I did some more research and I found out that that's exactly what happens to UFO abductees. They seem to get into a trance where you're not afraid anymore, or they're doing something they wouldn't normally do, or going someplace they wouldn't normally go. And they do that as a means to keep you from, they're trying to decrease the traumatization, the fright, the fear, because they want to build that relationship. Now, from that experience, I have no idea what the next step is. Um, and when you do the research, you'll find out because they question the abductees. They say, well, did they tell you why they're here, what their plan is, what's going on? And all the abductees 100% agree was they told me nothing. They told me nothing. And that's exactly what happened to me. It's like I got no communication, like there was no talking, no nothing. I'm not really sure what the next steps are or what I should do, you know? So, but it's one of those things where it's like it's interesting experience. I know I should have been like very freaking out and terrified about it. So anyway, a lot of other things happened that I'm not going to go into here. So like I said, I'll put a bunch of stuff together with the images on Patreon, and you can check that out. And it really gets deep into that because it happened exactly the way the oracle said. The oracle said, Kasank, wait, they will make contact. And I didn't realize them making contact really meant them reaching out to me. I just had to be at the right place at the right time. And I knew that they were going to arrange that. They were going to find a way to arrange that. You know what I mean? But let me explain something to you Magi's. You don't realize what a beautiful experience and a beautiful universe you're in. And because we are bombarded by things like poverty, racism, sexism, government that's out of control, we don't understand. They keep us caught up in those details, and they keep us stressed out to where we can't think clearly. And the idea of if there's life in outer space, that question should never have even come up. There is life in outer space. We know that, and the government knows that. Their job is to keep it from us. Our job is to individually, if we can, to initiate that contact because they're not going to disclose anything. And some people say, well, they have a real, it's, you know, it's for national security while they're not telling us things. No, that's bull because they want to control the planet. You're dealing with psychopaths who don't have our best interests at heart. Everything they tell us is a lie, from religion, and I've told many people this. They send these probes to Mars, which is just a smokescreen. They know they're trying to set up a base on Mars. They know they're doing all of this stuff. They say, well, we've sent out probes and we've got this telescope and that telescope, and we can't find life. Explain to me why does the Vatican have a superpowered telescope called Lucifer, and no one can get permission to look through the telescope? They don't want you to know what they know. and what they see. ETs are not hiding. They're not hiding. They're waiting to make contact with us. It's a bigger universe out there than we realize it. All right. And we have to start taking into account that there's brothers and sisters out there that can help us in our situation, to help us to free the planet. So I want to thank you, Magi's, for checking in today to hear this. I hope this has expanded your awareness of what's really going on in the universe, and how underhanded, vicious, and criminally centered our government is in keeping this information from us. You have to think. They've trapped us in left brain thinking. They've instituted something called racism on the planet. These people are sick. Don't believe anything they say. Don't believe a word they say. You are Magi's. You are magicians. You are the next leaders. Keep doing your studies. The ancestors, interdimensional beings, ETs, will work with you if what you're doing is based in Ma'at. This is Kasak Ma'akeperu, son of Ma'at and Tahuti. Ma'at is the beautiful goddess Heru. Till my next broadcast, Amun Ra.